I was initially hesitant to make a review of The Mummy 2017, for the simple reason that everyone else has already done it. The film has been endlessly analyzed and picked apart by hundreds of critics. We've heard all about the film's perceived shortcomings, how it tanked at the box office, and how the Dark Universe was a terrible idea that was destined for failure. Some of that commentary has been extremely insightful, but I think I have something new to add to the conversation. Much of the criticism leveled at The Mummy 2017 does not address what the filmmakers were trying to do. That's not to say that this is a good movie or that I'm going to defend it. It's not, and I won't. The Mummy 2017 sucks, but it isn't complete trash. It's not as bad as Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. I can see very clearly what Universal and the filmmakers were going for, and how, exactly, they fell so abysmally short. There is a good movie buried in here, somewhere. We've just got to delve deep and find it. As you know, all Mummy movies need a prologue, as is mandated by federal law. The prologue of The Mummy 2017 inexplicably starts in medieval England. We see some Crusader knights put a stone of unknown significance on top of some dead guy. There's no context whatsoever to tell us who these guys are or why this moment has meaning. A Spielbergian transition brings us to the modern day, where a construction crew working on the London Underground stumbles across the Crusader tomb.
The tomb appears to have been built during the Second Crusade, which means it's filled with the bodies of Crusader knights who invaded Egypt.
The Second Crusade went to Syria, not Egypt, but whatever. Then Russell Crowe shows up, is incredibly rude to this poor construction worker, and kindly informs the audience what the hell's going on.
This tomb reveals antiquity's darkest secret.
Only then do we backtrack to ancient Egypt to meet our antagonist. Why didn't the movie start here, where the relevant information begins? If it's that vital to see where the stone ended up, which it isn't, then why don't we see that after the ancient Egypt stuff? After we understand its importance? It would make a whole lot more sense. 5 minutes in, and I already feel like I'm watching a movie made by a schizophrenic person.
Set, the god of death.
Set was the god of chaos and the desert. Anubis was the god of death, but whatever. It's almost as if 6 screenwriters wrote vastly different scripts for The Mummy 2017. One had a prologue set in ancient Egypt, another had a prologue set during the Crusades, and another had one where Russell Crowe was taking charge of an archaeological dig. And then somebody cobbled them together to create an unholy abomination of a film that makes no narrative sense at all.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Visually, this prologue is nothing to write home about. It looks cheap. Much of this sequence is filmed in close-up, and it's very dimly lit, as if the cinematographer was hiding the fact that the sets were shoddily built. I don't get a sense of the setting at all. A quick shot of the pyramids doesn't count. This feels more like a History Channel reenactment than a big-budget movie.
There's not sufficient evidence that Hitler died in the bunker on April 30th, 1945.
Could Adolf Hitler have gotten out of Berlin, and how did he do it?
How did he enter Argentina?
It doesn't feel like a living, breathing world we've stepped into. Take these images you're looking at right now and compare them to this. So I promise I won't constantly compare this movie to the 1999 Mummy. There will be a little bit of that though, and in the case of the opening of the film, it's a pretty apt comparison. The voiceover of the Brendan Fraser movie tells us exactly what we need to know. The sequence of events delivers countless setups that are flawlessly paid off throughout the rest of the film. The prologue of The Mummy 1999 is as efficient as a brand new German car. The prologue of The Mummy 2017 is a $200 Craigslist piece of shit. So this is the introduction to Tom Cruise's character.
Out of luck, huh, Sarge? The civilians are gone. It's filled with insurgents down there. I guess we're too late.
Okay, first of all, can we please not have ISIS appear in our fun adventure movie for all ages? Nazis are fun. ISIS is not fun. Second of all, why is Tom Cruise and that other guy dressed like that? Why are they riding horses? Isn't this supposed to be modern-day Iraq? Why do they have those water skins instead of like a Nalgene bottle? Y'all, people in the Middle East don't dress like that no more. If these two are trying to blend in with the locals, they're doing a really shitty job. If anything, that getup would make them more suspicious. It would be like a Russian spy walking into an American town dressed in a suit and fedora from the 1940s and saying, "Hello everyone, I am called Joe, everyday ordinary capitalist American." At one point, Tom Cruise refers to this map and a handwritten note. Dude, why do you need that map? Haven't you ever heard of Google Earth? You can get it on your phone. And why a handwritten note instead of an intercepted email or something? That would have been cool. Ah, I hear you thinking, but horses and turbans are more adventure-y. You know, Indiana Jones takes place in the 30s, and the Brendan Fraser one took place in the 20s, and it's just more adventure-y to have older-looking stuff. And there's the rub. This movie is too fearful to commit to its setting. I love adventure movies set in the past, but it's been done. An Indiana Jonesy, Rick O'Connelly adventure film set in the 21st century that's actually well executed could be a nice, original idea. I'd go see it. Maybe there was a draft of the script that took place in the 20s, I don't know. Tom Cruise is constantly doing shit that Rick O'Connell probably could have gotten away with, but these days would result in litigation.
Why did you kiss me?
When all is about to be hanged, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Miss Halsey and I did spend a delightful evening in Baghdad, a very long and satisfying evening.
You know, maybe they could acknowledge it a little bit, make a couple jokes about it. Like Tom Cruise shoots a rope and the archaeologist says, "What the hell are you doing?" I don't know, I'm adventuring, just doing adventure stuff. That rope was 5,000 years old, Tom Cruise. Sorry, I didn't know. You always shoot the rope in the movies. If this film wanted to take itself a little less seriously, then that could have been a fun dynamic. And again, I can see where they were coming from. I'm sure they were saying to themselves, ooh, let's fuse that old-fashioned mummy adventure with modern technology and sensibilities. But they failed. Spectacularly. One old thing that's not very adventure-y is actor Tom Cruise. I'll keep this short, because it's been said before, but he is way too old to play this part. He should have played one of the resurrected Crusaders. That would have been much more appropriate for his age range.
You are a younger man.
He is? By what, like 6 months? The part of Nick Morton was clearly written for a much younger actor. His flirty scenes with Jenny the archaeologist are just kind of weird and creepy, and he has no chemistry whatsoever with Sofia Boutella. The Nick-Aminet connection should have felt sexy, like Mina and Dracula in that Gary Oldman movie. But instead it feels like Aminet just has daddy issues. Well, obviously she has daddy issues. And it makes no sense that Tom Cruise is just a sergeant and he's clearly of an age with the general. Our other lead character was also woefully miscast. International superstar Annabelle Wallis plays Jenny, who's like an archaeologist who works for Russell Crowe, but also the army. It's unclear. Wallis's performance is cold and alien, in a role that's supposed to be warm and endearing. But I can kind of understand this misstep. There's really no precedent for this kind of character. No mummy movie has ever had a capable, sympathetic, likable female lead. It's just never happened, so...
Some badass females just telling the boys how it is.
Do they know something we don't? They're led by a woman. What does a woman know?
That's the statue of Anubis. Its legs go deep underground. According to Bembridge scholars, that's where we'll find a secret compartment containing the Golden Book of Amun-Ra.
The casting isn't all bad, though. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I actually really liked Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll. His scenes are entertaining, and he's at just the right level of campy. I mean, come on, it's a mummy movie. Some scenery chewing is appropriate. Sofia Boutella was an equally good choice. She brought the thunder, man. I just loved the animal intensity she brought to every scene. It was just really sexy. Thank you, Sofia, for giving me the sexy mummy I never knew I needed. I would totally let her turn me into set. Fuck the world, my new girlfriend's awesome. I mean, Anck-su-namun Moon was sexy as hell too, but not when she came back as a mummy. Aminet's just... can't really put my finger on it. I think it's the way she vomits up all that silver goo, or maybe it's the hole in her face, or maybe that she's into tickle play. Man, could you imagine if Imhotep and Aminet got it on? I'd buy that for $1. But they wouldn't be fully regenerated. Oh no, they'd be like halfway there with scarabs crawling all over them and shit. Hey fanfiction writers, get on this. I know you're watching this video. Please email the story you write to vigomortensensextape@gmail.com. Aminet should have gotten a lot more screen time. Her objectives and motivations were weak. What a wasted opportunity, man. She looks good, her methods of dispatching people are cool and creepy, and the character is brought to life by a competent performance. She had the potential to be a really great villain. It's just a pity that the two characters we spend the most time with are about as charismatic as Jeb Bush. Jenny's weird, semi-platonic relationship with Tom Cruise is supposed to be the emotional core of the film, and yet she's boring and comes across as insincere.
I care about you.
And he's just an asshole whose character arc is completely unearned. We've all seen movies where a selfish main character learns to be selfless. It's a bit of a cliche, but it can be emotionally engaging when done well, and it could have worked for this movie. Maybe they should have given Groundhog Day a watch before sitting down to write the script. Bill Murray's character starts off as a huge prick, but we like him because he's oddly charming, and we root for him despite his flaws. As with so many aspects of The Mummy 2017, this is entirely a script problem. We shouldn't be watching this film saying to ourselves, oh, our main character is a selfish bastard. I wonder if he's going to learn to become considerate of others. We should just be enjoying the ride. And yet I find it impossible to watch this movie and not overanalyze it. There are so many logical inconsistencies in this film, it would be nearly impossible to mention them all. But that don't mean I ain't gonna try. Why are there convenient ropes and pulleys to bring up Eminet's coffin?
Those strains aren't for bringing it up. They're for holding it down.
Wait, what? That's not how gravity works. The ancient Egyptians were not fools.
Seti was no fool.
If they wanted to keep her body in prison, they would have sealed it up with a gigantic stone slab.
Please be careful, this is 5,000 years old.
How do you know that? That doesn't look like any normal Egyptian sarcophagus. Did you do a quick carbon dating test off screen?
Hieroglyphs are definitely New Kingdom.
The New Kingdom of Egypt was 3,000 years ago, not 5.
Set, the god of death.
Anubis was the god of death. Okay, if this guy actually stabbed a general, the other soldiers on the plane would have just shot him dead without a second thought. Why are they hesitating? A US military plane crashed into this church 6 hours ago. Why aren't there armed police to guard this crash site? Keep in mind, Tom Cruise just had about 6 shots and God knows how many beers. Do the British police make a habit of letting hammered Americans into their crime scenes? Why are Russell Crowe's henchmen dressed like they shop at Dillard's? Oh, you got a prisoner? Oh yeah, just take him through the secret laboratory on the way to the boss's office. Yeah, no, he looks like a trustworthy guy. He won't blab. He won't say anything.
Your language is simple.
No, it isn't. I'm pretty sure English, which is a Germanic language but has influences from Latin, Greek, French, Celtic, and Old Norse, is a hell of a lot more complex than ancient Egyptian was. Wait, what? Those are the pyramids of Giza, right? And they're just galloping on toward them? Giza is just outside of Cairo, man. Cairo is a big city. If they were actually riding horses around Giza, they'd be passing right by the Pizza Hut. But you know, these are all just small examples of a much bigger problem with The Mummy 2017. The sloppy storytelling.
Thank you for bringing me back to life and everything, Nick.
Oh,
what are we even
God.
doing here?
Here's one example. A little fix that would have helped the first act of this movie immensely. After Tom Cruise's famous plane crash, he wakes up in a body bag. He's dead for literally a shot of the movie. Come on, y'all, milk it a little bit. How about this? Jenny comes in with the coroner to identify Tom's body. She cries over him and says something along the lines of,
Oh God, I've lost him. And I never told him anything. I just wasn't ready, Marcus. 5 minutes would have been enough.
And then, bam! He comes back to life, and the coroner screams like a little girl. It's just depressing. I feel like this is the kind of feedback I'd give to a freshman at film school. No, I take that back. I've seen student films better than The Mummy 2017. This morgue scene just screams to be fleshed out, but for whatever reason, nobody thought of it. Another rule they teach you in Screenwriting 101 is that each scene in a film should have a purpose. It should get you from point A to point B. And yet there are so many sequences in this movie that repeat information we already know or do nothing to advance the plot. This scene with the rats in the alley is pretty cool, but it's rendered utterly meaningless by the reveal that it was a dream sequence and didn't actually happen. Then there's the big one, the sequence in Dr. Jekyll's laboratory.
Welcome to Prodigium, Mr. Morton.
The Prodigium, whatever. Again, I like Russell Crowe's Dr. Jekyll, but the character has no utilitarian purpose in the story other than to set up sequels that will never, ever happen.
Known to Egyptians as the god of death.
It was fucking a nuke! This is a common problem in these cinematic universes. Wasting screen time on characters and ideas that will only become important in future installments. And now that we know that the Dark Universe will probably be abandoned, this sequence is just embarrassing to watch. Talk about putting the cart in front of the horse. But don't worry, everybody, don't panic. There's a pretty obvious way to fix this section of the film. Just have something change, by which I mean give the action consequences. When Dr. Jekyll turns into Mr. Hyde, just have him escape the laboratory and go join Aminet. It would raise the stakes in the third act of the movie. Hyde could lead her right to the stone and help her dispatch Jekyll's henchmen, and I'm sure he'd even hold Tom Cruise down while Aminet does the whole slicey-dicey ritual. And then at the end, somebody would stab him with that syringe, and he'd be like, "Oh, so terribly sorry, Mr. Morton, I do get so carried away." He's an interesting character. Just give him something to do. I feel like audiences and critics wouldn't have hated Russell Crowe in this movie so much if the character was actually integral to the story, and not just, you know, there. It's no secret that Tom Cruise had an absurd amount of creative control on this project.
He expects everybody to do exactly what they're supposed to do when they're on camera. It's like on a team. If like the team captain really cares about winning, that team has a better chance of it being good. Tom's like a really intense team captain.
Nowhere is this more evident than in the final battle between Nick and Aminet.
I'm sorry. We're just never gonna happen. And it's not me. It's you.
See, that's not a bad line. At least it wouldn't be if it were coming out of Brendan Fraser's mouth 20 years ago. Tom has all the good lines here, all the big emotional moments. He makes all the consequential decisions. And meanwhile, Aminet, a much more interesting and likable character, just goes,
"Give in to me. Give in.
Give in.
For 5 minutes. Why does he need to give in anyway? Can't you just stab him with the dagger and be done with it? And because Tom's character is so boring, this climactic sequence is boring. I'm completely emotionally disconnected from what I'm seeing. The film makes a huge assumption here, that Tom Cruise is just so charismatic and talented that I'll automatically root for his character. He is a talented guy, but decades of being a movie star has inflated Tom Cruise's ego to the point of delusional psychosis. He believes he can still play suave leading men at 108 years old. And I bet that he believed that the conclusion of this film would be thrilling as long as he was featured in it heavily. Well, Tom, you can't. And it isn't. Maybe if we had a couple other characters involved, reading an inscription to weaken Aminet or something, then there would have been at least a little sense of urgency. This movie would have worked so much better with an ensemble cast. Characters with distinct personalities working together to stop Aminet and save the world. In interviews, the cast and crew talk endlessly about how timeless the Universal monsters are, about how compelling they are because they're both scary and sympathetic in equal measure. If the intention here was to create a memorable villain, then why is this the Tom Cruise show? The heroes in the old Universal monster movies were basically supporting characters. No one remembers David Manners as Jonathan Harker. Everybody remembers Bela Lugosi as Dracula. And while those movies vary significantly in terms of quality, you can't deny how iconic those monsters were and still are. You know, Nick should have just killed himself at the end. That would have made the most narrative sense. The other characters keep going on about how he sacrificed himself.
You were wrong about Nick. He gave his life to save me.
But he didn't, did he? He just became a badass, half-undead mummy man who can fart up sandstorms. And then he goes galloping off to the Cairo Pizza Hut for some lunch. The film ends with Tom Cruise becoming a badass, because in Tom Cruise's mind, he is a badass.
It's like being on a roller coaster ride. That's what this film's going to deliver. It's going to keep you right on the edge of your seat. You're not going to want to take your eyes off the screen.
If Aminet had taken center stage, with a strong supporting cast, emphasis on supporting, of heroes, then The Mummy 2017 and the Dark Universe as a whole could have been something special. Just like the Marvel Cinematic Universe highlights different heroes in each film, the Dark Universe could have done the same, but with villains. This movie could have been good, and the Dark Universe itself is not an inherently bad idea. It could be salvaged, but only if Universal learns from its mistakes. Universal has sinned, my friends, and that most grievously. But this franchise is not beyond redemption. I have a plan to snatch victory out of the jaws of defeat, and once again, we should look to Marvel's business model for inspiration. In 2012, Marvel made a terrible Spider-Man movie. 2 years later, they made a sequel. Both films made a good chunk of cash, but when the time came to make Captain America Civil War, in which Spider-Man would appear, Marvel decided they wanted to go a different direction with the character. They recast the role and discarded the films from their official canon. So here's my idea, and it's stupidly simple. Just start over. You've done it before. Remember Dracula Untold? Me neither. Pretend The Mummy 2017 never happened. A hypothetical new film would have to be about a different monster, of course. If you made another Mummy movie right away, it would just come off as desperate. Besides, you already made a great Mummy movie, 20 years ago. Add the 1999 film to your official canon. You've done a great job alienating moviegoers like me who grew up with the Brendan Fraser films. A small gesture like that would go a long way. Then you could have tie-ins, little Easter eggs in the new movies, not to mention comic books, video games, and toys. It's been suggested that Universal should give small budgets to independent filmmakers and make R-rated, straight-up horror movies out of these properties, but I think that would be a mistake. There have certainly been some great independent horror films the last couple of years, but the fact that you made an action-adventure film is not the problem. The problem is that you let a self-obsessed movie star walk all over you and your movie, and that you arrogantly thought that The Mummy would be a surefire box office hit. But who should our new monster be? Frankenstein is the obvious choice. The theme of science going too far is prescient in these troubled times.
When you hear of supporters of the singularity, people like Ray Kurzweil talking about being able to defeat aging, the body can live forever, what do you think?
Well, I think it's, I think this has been a core animating idea of the entire modern scientific project.
The thing is, there have been too many dumb Frankenstein movies over the last few years. You've burned us too much, Hollywood. I seriously doubt that anyone would go see yet another reimagining of the Mary Shelley novel. Would Dracula work? I don't think so. You managed to fuck up Dracula Untold, which has a great premise and could have been awesome. And, I think people are just completely over vampires at this point. It's a similar story with a Van Helsing standalone film. I actually like the Stephen Sommers Van Helsing movie, but most people think it was stupid, so that would probably tank. You'd need Van Helsing to show up in the Dark Universe eventually, but lead up to it. Don't just shove him in right away. How about the creature from the Black Lagoon? People like the movie where Paddington's mom fucked a fish, even though it was overrated and actually sucked. The Gill Man would be a solid choice for a monster. There hasn't been a Black Lagoon movie in 60 years. And since the creature is from the Amazon, you could throw in some Incan tomb raiding in there too. Could be fun. But if I were you, I'd go with the Wolfman. The 2010 Benicio del Toro Wolfman pretty much just came and went. But it was a damn good movie, with amazing makeup and a memorable score by Danny Elfman. There have been plenty of werewolf horror films, even werewolf comedy films, but I don't think I've ever seen a werewolf action-adventure film. Russell Crowe and his henchmen could hunt the Wolfman as he comes to terms with his curse. Throw in a compelling love story between well-rounded characters played by actors with actual chemistry, and I think you'd have a hit. If you need inspiration, read The Last Werewolf, a trilogy by Glenn Duncan. Hell, hire Glenn Duncan to write your screenplay. He's a damn genius. You could do a lot worse. Just tell him to keep the graphic werewolf sex scenes to an absolute minimum. But ultimately, all this would be for nothing if you don't bring something new to these dusty old stories. It's been thoroughly proven that Universal monster movies don't succeed based on brand recognition alone. The first two Brendan Fraser Mummy movies were hits because they were fresh and exciting. Sure, they're essentially Jason and the Argonauts meets Indiana Jones, but they never felt like a cheap ripoff. The Mummy 2017, however, is an entirely different story.
Hey little girl, you look so nice in that pretty red dress with those pretty black eyes.
Hello, Mr. Wolf. Well, what a surprise to find you here so deep in the night.
My dear little girl, what's the rush? How about supper? Just the two of us.
Oh, Mr. Wolf, you want me to stay, but I fear we'll regret it one day. I have the thing you love, but the need in me is way too much. If I open wide, one of us may get lost inside. Or you, one of us is going to need to die.
For her sins, Amunet was mummified, alive.
Imhotep's priests were condemned to be mummified alive.
You see, they interrupted a ritual in process.
Pharaoh's bodyguards had followed Imhotep and stopped him before the ritual could be completed.
What are you doing here?
Jenny looks good.
Okay, this isn't happening.
I mean, really great.
Really, stop.
You know, I always thought I had a chance with her.
What?
You're not real. I don't be a putz, David.
He is a monster now.
He is also still a man. A good man.
Because he's the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs right now.
Sometimes it does take a monster to fight a monster.
He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector, a dark knight.
We've been searching for something called the Dagger of Set. A ceremonial knife with a large jewel at the hilt.
The army that wielded it could conquer the world in a single day. It was the Dagger of Enlil.
Do you realize what this is?
The Dagger of Set. She was gonna drive that thing right through.
There's only one weapon that can defeat her.
Is it the power of true love?
No, you idiot, a weapon! A sacrificial dagger.
You will be a living god.
It's not too late. Join us. Death cannot touch you when you walk amongst the gods.
All I have to say is, where the fuck's my check, Universal?
I love the whole sand wall trick. It was beautiful. You bastard.
You love.